Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Soul Chat. I am your host, Ebony Tutora, and Soul Chat is a platform where we are having conversations that go deeper than the surface. My goal is not only to help people heal, but to also give us permission to thrive and step out of survival mode. If you are new to me, I want to say hello. Again, my name is Ebony Tutora. I am a life and spiritual coach dedicated to holistic methods of self love, soul healing, and sound healing. I have a profound passion for sharing the wisdom that I've acquired throughout my life's journey to empower others to discover their most authentic self. So, a lot of what we share and I share on this platform are not only things that I've learned or am learning, um, but this is also a conversation with us. Like I'm saying, with us, like I'm having these conversations that I'm having with myself, with you. So it's beautiful to see your comments. It's beautiful to see what resonates with you. Also, I wanted to share last episode, I lost my mouse. It just like disappeared and it was like invisible. So I had to keep hovering over stuff. So I totally forgot to edit that out, but there is no shame in my game and there's a lot of grace that I give myself. So I know y'all have the vision. You see the vision, okay, the vision of the podcast. And thank you so much for being avid listeners of the podcast and supporting it. I really do appreciate it as we continue to grow into new, bigger levels. I have such great visions for this podcast. So now back to today's episode. The last episode, we talked about the loneliness epidemic. What is it and how can we heal from it? So if you have not yet checked that out, definitely go check that out after this podcast. I gave you some tips on how to navigate that through connection, authenticity, honoring your trauma, really letting go the no new friends motto, and really stepping into community. Now, this book that I'm reading currently in this season called The Way of the Conscious Creator by the amazing Ashr Gray. You cannot get this book from anybody but Asher, which is such a blessing because I saw him on another podcast, messaged him. I was like looking for his book. I was like, this looks so interesting. And he ended up sending it to me. So thank you so much, Asher. We are keeping him in our prayers. He will be a guest very soon. He is currently going through the life experience of throat cancer. So we send him amazing healing vibrations and love and light. And definitely make sure you follow him on social media. I'll leave all his links in the chat, as well as I'm pretty sure there's a wait list or some email list you can get on. So as I was reading this book and having the discussion about the loneliness epidemic, he lists 9 fundamental needs, right? And there's a lot of books that really do talk about like our fundamental needs and the things that make us tick. And I always love reading different perspectives on it. And I love Asher's. I mean, his is really just coming from deep self reflection. And I can't wait for you all to even have a chance to be able to get this book because it's so pivotal, even to my own understanding and just really honoring the expression of life and growth and like not beating ourselves up, understanding where we're at, accountability, and stepping into thriving. Yes. So the 9 fundamental needs are these: spiritual sensation, the need to feel authentic spiritual well being; connection, the need to share a sustained feeling of affinity with others; communication, the need to share and exchange thoughts, feelings, and desires; security, the need to be free from the fear of imagined danger and threat; community, the need to relate and collaborate in ways that bring mutual fulfillment; intimacy, the need to share a sincere and authentic connection with others; reflection, the need to quietly contemplate and consider spiritual insight; progression, the need to evolve towards a more desired aim and state of being; and lastly, creative expression, the need to create through deliberate and inspired action. Now, one of the things I'm always going to touch on is healing our trauma, right? And if we understand these fundamental needs, and if you've been listening to all the podcasts, there's always this baseline of what's happening, right? What's the problem? What's your problem, right? And then what is the solution? What are the solutions we're coming with? Whether the solutions are different ways to think, new ways to conceptualize, which is kind of different ways to think, um, new ways to be, habits to implement, right? And I found this book to be so amazing. He even gives some examples where he talks about when the trauma virus was born, and he gives the story of Cain and Abel. And I've never ever seen anyone talk about the story of Cain and Abel in relation to the trauma virus. And I'll just give you permission to get the book because I feel like that's not something that I can touch on in this segment. I really wanted to tie this and bridge this into the loneliness epidemic and just some of the things that we can all consider. We can all consider what are some of our fundamental needs, right? So if you listen to those 9 different needs, if you need to go play it back on slow, so you listen to those needs again, right? Write them down and look at where are you lacking, right? Where are you lacking not having your needs met, right? Because we think our needs are just like, do I have enough money? Do do I have clothes? Do I have a house? Do I have food, right? Those are the basic needs of like survival. But again, we're talking about thriving. And I feel like these fundamental needs give us a right to thrive, right? Reflection, right? Progression, creative expression. It's not enough to just survive anymore, right? It just leads to a very miserable life. Anyone that you know that is just surviving, people can tell you they're happy, but we are all here to thrive to our fullest potential, right? To grow to our fullest potential. And that never ceases. You don't ever reach that place. I mean, authentically speaking, right? You're always going to be becoming. So I want to fast forward in this book to share a few more things with you that I have read thus far that I think really tie into when we talk about trauma, healing, and stepping into a mode of thriving. Because essentially, not only do we have those needs, we also have, he also underlines 21 undermining survival patterns. So let me just break it down for you, right? So while we have the needs and the things that we need to thrive and to feel like we are wholesome, right? We also have undermining survival patterns that keep us stuck in different places. I was just on a call today and the woman was sharing with me, typically I won't reach out to people. I'll think like it's too much or they don't have space. And I said to her, I said, well, that's because somewhere along your childhood, you decided your emotions were too big. People were telling you you were too much, right? You felt afraid to express sadness or anger or grief because no one gave you the space to hold them. No one gave you the space to say, oh, you're crying, you're upset, or you're angry. What are you angry about? What's making you angry? And helped you work through it. Why? Because a lot of the adults that may have been raising us didn't know how to work through them on their own at all either, right? So they couldn't really help us navigate our emotions. And we come from a community and a generation sometimes of silence, where we use the silent treatment to navigate things that we're uncomfortable with and or that we don't understand, right? Silence and or, rejection. So I'm going to read again. So this is an episode essentially where y'all just need to be taking notes, right? Because this is, the reflection and self-awareness are what helps us grow. I will never sit here and act like I am the most perfect person ever. I will never sit here and act like I don't lose my cool or I don't have days that I feel slightly anxious or all the things, right? Or that I can get in my own way. Honestly, showing up here talking to you is me getting out of my own way, because sometimes, especially when we're in healing spaces or we're changing and we're growing, we feel unworthy and we feel like, well, who am I to talk to people when ... And other people want us to feel that way too, right? They want you to feel small. They want you to feel like, well, you think you know everything. It's no, this is simply a journey of life. And a journey of life means I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to get better. I'm going to continue to forgive myself for hurting others. I'm going to forgive others for hurting me. And I'm going to keep it pushing, right? Like I'm not here to stay stuck in, gossip and all the things, right? So let's get into survival patterns. And again, you may have read things like this other places. I'm an avid reader, and I feel like to date, this is the most comprehensive breakdown that I have read. Like I even wrote little notes next to it. Okay, see my notes? Probably can't see my notes. My little notes next to it, like, okay, yes, no. I used to be like that. I'm getting better. Right. As I was reading these, I was like identifying with like, oh yeah, oh God, yeah, I be going there sometimes, right? So the first one is ungrateful and entitled. The second one is unable to give and receive love. The third is judgmental and arrogant. I was like, I'm getting better. Unrealistic expectations of self and others, passive aggressive, vague, and misunderstood. So if you can relate with these, just be like, check, 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 right? Write them down because you got to understand how do you undermine. This is like, right, undermining survival patterns. Essentially, he's saying they undermine our purpose, right? They're always gonna put you into that shrunken mode of not enough and ego and fight or flight, right? Um, Overly dependent on others and playing the victim, seeking external validation from others, living in denial of the truth. As I was reading these, I was like, ooh, and you could just look at those people around us, right? That do the same exact thing. Regulating emotions with addictive mechanisms. And let me tell you what, an addictive mechanism can be healthy shit too. Please do not get it confused. Everyone is not hooked on drugs. Okay. Everyone is not an alcoholic. Some of us use self help to deny the truth and to be addicted to self help so we don't have to really look in the mirror. Some of us can be addicted to a healthy lifestyle, right? Eating vegan. And then that leads us back up to being judgmental and arrogant. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to be here to help us all pull the cards, pull the rug from underneath our feet because we need to ground ourselves in what is true. We need to keep peeling back the layers that hold us hostage and keep us in this state of ego because ego, while it is a great thing, it is a weapon as well if we're using it in a way to puff up our chest and look down on others because they're not doing the work or they're not evolved as us, or they don't eat vegan, or they shop here, or they go here, or they live there. We just have to break all those barriers down in this lifetime because none of that matters. At the end of the day, it's about who are you at a soul level, and only you know. Only you know. Only you are going to be the one to have to sit with your dying conscience and decide, did I live life to the best of my ability? Was I kind when I needed to be kind? Did I forgive when I needed to forgive? Only you. Only you can sit there and be like, am I really happy? You can lie to everyone else, but you cannot lie to yourself. And that is a fact. Okay. Creating insecure and unhealthy attachments, allowing fear to keep me in inaction. Are you allowing fear to hold you hostage from what's possible? Fear is like, it's a human disease. He talks about that in this book as well. It's literally a disease, right? Because it stops you from even having an evolved perspective that you are here to live and to become everything you were created to be. Impatience with self and others, neglecting dreams and desires, taking contributions and sacrifices for granted, reacting to the projections of my own fearful mind, closed-minded and dismissive of new possibilities, rejecting opportunities for growth and expansion. You'll find a lot of people who are healing, or this is like when you try to be peaceful with someone, or you've learned something new, and you're like, a lot of times I'll give everyone the charge of the forgiveness call. You call someone, and you say, "Hey, I forgive you," and a lot of times people will react. The other person on the line will react to that call like, "What you need to forgive me for?" Right? Because sometimes when we're ready to heal, other people are not ready to heal because they're going to reject that opportunity because they're not ready, right? They always say defensiveness and dismissive behavior is a sign that someone is not ready. They don't want to hear it, right? Living in spiritual scarcity and creative incompletion. And lastly, recreating familiar yet self-defeating experiences. Amen and ashe, honey. I am going to get into the next part. I was like, is this a little lengthy? But I do want to give you just a touch of this book because this book is so good. And it really helps to bridge where you may be at right now and the habits that you have. Like I could talk about it from a chakra perspective. And I could list the different chakras in each of these survival patterns, right? And I just found this guide to be so comprehensive, right? Because what happens is we can understand something at a surface level. That's why it's soul chat. But we do have to go a little bit deeper just to see, okay, well, how do I process life? What are the experiences that I feel the most of? And if you know you identify with some of these um, survival patterns, it's just taking notes. I think a lot of times people don't want to heal because they go into judgment of themselves, right? Having a lack of patience for themselves. That was in one of those survival patterns, right? And you got to understand energetically, you may be operating in a survival pattern. Yes, you may have changed. Yes, you may love yourself a little bit more. Yes, you may have had amazing opportunities come your way. And I'm talking about places I've been, honey, that I still am navigating, right? Yes, I can say I've had successes. Yes, I can say I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, I've overcome this, I've witnessed this, I'm aware of this. However, there are still survival patterns that still try to take a hold of who I am, right? And again, the reason why it's a survival pattern is because it's who you had to become in order to get to where you are today. It's no different than the people who have to lie, kill, steal, and cheat to get to where they're at. It's a survival pattern. And that's something I want you all to remember. Is that was something I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking, people deserve to be forgiven. Why? Because they're literally operating at their level of survival pattern, their level of survival, right? When you hear them say things, when you hear them react a certain way, when they want to have certain conversations with you, when they want to complain, when they want to do certain things, which I'm going to read out in these next few pages, identify that they are simply operating at a level of trauma and you don't have to engage. When I engage with people, that's because I too am in a survival pattern. Ding, ding, ding. If you want to step out of the survival pattern, you got to stop engaging. And I know sometimes it feels so like it's an egotistical thing. Like we want to engage. You want to have the last word. I don't have to have the last word. For what? If it's not conductive, if it's not elevating, if it's not benefiting the situation, why I gotta have the last word? Why I gotta say anything if I know what might be said back is not going to benefit a wholesome conversation? I really been active on participating in that way in life, right? There are a lot of things that rub us wrong. When you understand your triggers, you can also understand, there's just certain things I need to stop responding to because it's taking me to a place of survival. You could just read one text, one email, and your whole mood shift. We don't need that. We don't need it. Read it, let it go. Oh, they're just operating in trauma, and I'm not going to traumatize myself by responding in an in a way that is not in my thriving self, in my soul self. So I don't know what to say right now. So I'm just going to say nothing. And that's the most mature thing that I can do right now. While others may disagree, you know your heart. And this is one of the things that I always say to myself is God knows my heart. God knows my heart and God knows the truth. I don't have to spend my life explaining myself to people. No, ma'am. Okay. So ungrateful and entitled, here is what it looks like. Believing the world owes me something based on past trauma, excessive self-importance. Oh God, I have been hurt. Arrogance, vanity, need for admiration and approval, expecting special favors and narcissistic behavior. Honey, have I moved out of this? Right? It's so easy to point a finger at people and their narcissistic behavior. We've all had tendencies of being a narcissist. Trust me, do not count yourself out. Unable to give and receive love, self-sabotage, narcissistic behavior, hoarding, withholding compliments and affection, needing to be better than or less than, tendency to isolate, carrying guilt and shame about the past, leaving the past incomplete. Honey, I have been her. Judgmental and arrogant, lacking compassion for self and others, using gossip as a weapon, making things that have nothing to do with me all about me, unwillingness to wear a shirt and a profile picture. I found that one funny. Inability to accept my flaws, showing or having pity rather than empathy, labeling others, unrealistic expectation of self and others, holding people to double standards. Ooh, they say what's good for the pot is good for the tea kettle, honey. It's important to understand you've hurt people too. You've hurt people too. I've hurt people too. I've said some things, honey. right? And I know I'm that person. I could say some things to tear your whole soul apart. And I know I've done it. You know, I remember a girl coming in my inbox being like, oh my God, in middle school, you were so mean to me. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. That's not who I am. I don't know what kind of conversation you want to have right now, but I apologize for my inner child self, right? But we've all hurt somebody. We've all been someone in someone's life. That's why healing is so important, because we do have to adjust the scales of karma. We have to adjust the scales of living in our purpose, right? And having those fundamental needs met so that we are at the very core being good people, right? Maybe you ain't fixed your credit yet. Maybe you got some debts that are overdue. Maybe you've said some harmful things in the past to people, right? But if you can work on yourself and continue to make that a daily practice, just self-reflection, right? Noticing when you're getting better, noticing when you're not responding to things, maybe because you don't know how to yet, but you know you're evolving, right? And choosing the high road, right? Perfectionism, believing that I am somehow immune from human suffering, using others as a security blanket, breaking promises made to myself and others. Ooh, honey, is anything hitting? Leave a comment. Passive aggressive, vague, and misunderstood. Honey, I used to be passive aggressive. Okay. Making idle threats, being jealous or vindictive, wild people pleasing, triangulation, bullying, and emotional displacement. I know I used to be so misunderstood because I had such a hard time expressing my wants and desires that I would just blow up, right? And still be misunderstood. You know what I'm saying? You yelling about everything from A to Z when you could have just talked about A when A was A, right? And that's why I always say there's stages to self-love. Because while I used to be that person, like I used to be that person who I would hold it all in. And then I had elevated to, okay, I'm just going to speak the truth. And I was not kind, honey, right? You know, this guy was on the internet. He said, how come people always got something to say when it's not nice? Why people always got something to say and it's rude? You know, people always want to tell the truth, but it's rude and it's not nice, right? I used to be her and I am not proud of it. I've had to tell previous coworkers or people that worked under me, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. If you're watching this right now, I am so sorry. I am so sorry of who I was in that season because, you know, I know better now. And I know that, you know, we do have life and death in the power of the tongue. If you can't help people, don't hurt them. Overly dependent on others, playing the victim, creating circumstances to be exploited, blaming others for things that are my responsibility, taking things personally, making assumptions, seeking attention through self-pity, demanding to be saved, creating scenarios to be heard. Ooh, honey, do they sound familiar? Seeking validation from others, seeking attention through acting out, being overly concerned with the opinion of others, unable to handle rejection, seeking attention through self-pity. Self-pity came up quite a few times. Living in denial of the truth, seeking attention through self-pity, compromising integrity to keep something or someone in my life, surrounding myself with people I think are beneath me. Ooh, women do that a lot. Women and men, I can't say women, all people do that a lot, right? Where you actually hang out with people who are beneath your potential and who you are as a person because deeply it makes you feel better about yourself, right? And please, I know some of these things I may say they hurt, but they're going to heal you because the best thing you can do is recognize how you be, how you show up in the world, how you process the world, how you look at the world, because that's what you receive, right? You receive what you put out there. Sometimes people look at me and they can't understand why she's so blessed. Why she always she's saying this, but she's over there, you know, like people be really trying to piece together my life. And I'm like, you don't understand God's favor. You don't understand like just being a good person. I am not perfect, but I am a good person. And I have worked more than anything to simply just be that. How do I talk to people? If I make mistakes, do I apologize? Right? Am I working on being my best, on doing the best? Right? I might not be where I want to be in some areas of my life at all. But if I died today, I could say I was a good person. Okay, I could say I impacted a lot of people with just my desire to be a good, kind person. Regulating in emotions with addictive mechanisms, sexualizing people are stressed, hoarding, unable to handle rejection, tendency to isolate, alcoholism, drug addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder, too much screen time, fixing emotions with food, self-harm, obsessively seeking control, overachievement, perfectionism, codependency, creating insecure, unhealthy attachments, not following through on commitments, supporting a belief in lack. I'm going to shorten it because we got to catch up on some things. Um, Allowing fear to keep you in inaction, putting yourself and others in jeopardy for profit, inability to set boundaries, inability to let thoughts, needs, and desires be known, being inauthentic and people pleasing, right? Allowing fear. There's so many of us that allow fear to keep us in inaction. And I think a lot of us have met people like this in our lives, and it kind of turns off our heart space where, people are just using you, right? Or they're manipulating you into getting what they want, and I always say to my good friends, I always have to thank them because I say, it's been a long time coming that good people find good people. And that's why we just need to focus on being good people because we want our people to also find us as well. Impatience with self and others, having road rage, needing to do things perfectly, um, obsessively honking the horn, interrupting others and talking over them, critical of myself and others. And honestly, when I read this, it made me think of so many people. And again, it's like, friend, I'm not taking this information in so I can judge people. I'm taking it in so I can understand and so that I can respond differently. Why would you want to keep responding to people's trauma? And again, the only reason why we respond to trauma is because we ourselves have so much trauma in us, right? Neglecting our dreams and desires, procrastination, discomfort with helping yourself, a tendency to isolate, taking contributions and sacrifices for granted, martyrdom, exploiting those who try to help me, taking all the credit for group efforts, minimizing other people's creative input, reacting to experiences with fear and anger, allowing resentment to drive me to destructive actions, bullying, needing to control outcomes, taking kindness and generosity for granted, exploiting those who try to help me, self-centeredness, living in denial of the truth, resenting people, calling me out on the truth, making assumptions. I'm gonna cut it here because you're getting the point, right? That these survival patterns are gonna cause us to live in it's like an animal that's been left out in the woods for too long, right? Your dog was stranded for too long. Now your dog ain't your dog no more. That dog is a whole wolf. That dog said, "What? You done left me out in this forest for so long. I've had to eat squirrels. I'm used to dog food. Honey, I'm a different dog. I'm a wolf now." Right? And you have to understand that all of us become that way. We become very uh, animalistic in our approach, which is why we can't use our higher mind. They say you only use 3% of your mind, right? So if that is true, then this is how we take our power back, right? This is how we step into thriving. It's just understanding. And I'm feeling it even in my body as I read all those things. It just lights all of you up, all of your trauma centers up because it's like, oh man, I got some things I gotta work on, right? And that's the best that we can do. The best thing you can do is something. The worst thing you can do is nothing. There's nothing like the ones who will talk about it and don't do anything about it. Nothing about it, right? We'll talk about the way the world is. We'll talk about the trauma, the this, the that, but have not seen a therapist yet, have not sat down and meditated yet. So if you're doing something, I want to praise you in that. The last thing I really want to touch on from this book, and again, this is like just me being so excited about this book that I'm like, I got to bring y'all into the discussion because we need to talk about these things because I don't even know how you feel. I know how I feel just reading all those things out loud, and I didn't even get through all of them. But it really opens up who we are, how we understand things, who we're going to decide to be, how we process even others. I don't care what people do for a living. Some people are still children in adult bodies, right? And it's better for us to understand that than to keep fighting it, than to keep trying to change people, trying to explain ourselves, exhausting our energy on everything but the one thing you can change, which is you. I mean, we can't even change our children. We can only do our best to be who we be to be impeccable with who we are, to continue to get better, to honor them in the ways that we can honor them. But they gotta learn. They gotta learn on their own. The last thing I wanted to touch, only because I've been having so many discussions, and I feel like since 2020, it's been like this buzzword of like, oh, we live in times of uncertainty, and it's like, what has ever been certain? The mirage is that everything is certain. So at the point of the book that I was in recently, he starts to talk about how sports analysts, they're predicting who's going to be the champion, right? The financial analysts are predicting the financial market, right? There's all these topics and discussions that we watch that they're basically preying on the need to know, right? The need to be sure, right? That's why faith is such an iffy concept, because it's like sometimes faith is a belief in the things unseen. It's a concept that is really challenging to grasp sometimes, because believing in something that you cannot see feels crazy, right? Can I get an amen? It feels crazy sometimes, right? You're like, dang, I'm believing in this thing. I haven't even seen no results. I ain't seen nothing come, like, but I'm believing, I'm 10 toes down that it's gonna work, right? The need for certainty. We have to shift the discussion, even in our own minds, where we're like, oh, life feels so uncertain for me right now. Uncertainty is a lie. Technically, what uncertainty is where your dreams go to thrive. Because if it's unknown, that means there's so much potential there. Does that make sense? Right? If it's the road less traveled, that means there's so much potential of what is to be discovered. And it scares us. I remember this past summer going down these trails that I'd never gone on with my kids and thinking like, oh my God, this actually feels scary. It feels scary to be going down these trails. I have no idea what type of wildlife is in this area. I'm not even prepared if there was some type of wildlife. And here I am just tracking along with a stroller and some babies, like, okay. And I'm like noticing in my nervous system, like, oh my God, I feel nervous as heck right now. Right. And I'm like, this is how life feels. You feel so nervous because you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to pop out. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if I'm going to fail. I don't know if, like, you're not going to die. Right. That's probably like the worst thing that can happen. Right. And even if you did, maybe that is the best thing, knock on wood. But seriously speaking, you know, I loved coming to that part of the book. I'm not even done. I'm probably about 75% through the book. And again, shout out to Asher for just sharing your heart and your level of awareness with me and those who've had a chance to read your book. I'm so grateful, because I really feel like I needed it at this time in my life, where I've really been praying to God to shift the way I react, shift the way that I see life. Some ways I need to go back and I need to step back into who I was and the path that I felt like I was on before I was distracted, before I was in my full survival self again. And I want to say sometimes you're going to experience like where we are going to be thrown into survival again, right? Let's say you're going through a divorce. Let's say you're going through a breakup. Let's say you're, moving across country. Let's say you're, even great things that happen to us can sometimes send us into survival. Why? Because we've never been there before, right? And those experiencing the fires in LA, I have friends who I know have built their life from the ground up, and they're in a space where they're shaking in their boots. And me having to remind them, if we've done it before, we could do it again. But that doesn't mean that we don't feel nervous, or that our nervous system isn't, shaky, or that we're lacking faith in those moments. So I really hope this has been really revealing to you for your own journey, just really looking at your the needs, like the functional needs that you have in your life that maybe you haven't considered. I think a lot of people think of creativity also and are like, I'm not creative. You are creative. You're a thinking being. You're always thinking about stuff. Even if it's the simplest thing, I just think we live in this social media world where if social media hasn't glamorized it, you don't think it's important. You don't think it's something worth being notated in your creative field. And it is. Creativity is creativity. And what is creativity? Thought. not only that, but I hope that the survival patterns were very expansive for you to really sit and understand, like, where are you in survival mode? Because sometimes it's such a sneaky thing. It's such a sneaky thing, right? Afterpay, right? Afterpay, Klarna, those are like survival mechanisms because you're almost paying in installments because you don't believe you'll have enough money right now or that it'll come back. So you got to split it up just in case, right? I like laugh at all those things. And really since doing the 30-day cleanse that I had done, I talked about in a few podcasts ago, 75 days of softness with my girl Naisha, it's really been opening me up to, especially the cleanse. The cleanse opened me up to all the ways we invest in our trauma, down to what we eat, down to what we say, down to what we watch. We are investing in our trauma. I invested in my trauma the other day. I'm even going to hold you. I was watching this special called Black and Beauty. And the girl who was like the stripper stuck in this life, I was like just watching it, rooting for her and her life. But why am I watching it? Because once that was kind of sort of me, not the stripper part, but just being stuck in a life where I always knew there was more and I always had really amazing people in my ear. However, those are types of lives that are really easy to get caught up in, right? Because they're, in my upbringing, that was very glamorized. I grew up watching Belly. If you ever heard of Belly, right? Shots, shout out to all my people who understand and know about those movies, right? And growing up around a community where I had Chanel bags and Chanel glasses in high school, so it was like I glamorized all these things that were actually really bad. So, anyways, I say all that to say, sometimes we do invest in our trauma, and to me, it's just having a sense of awareness of why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you listening to that song? Why are you watching that movie? Right? We invest in our trauma, I'm telling y'all, in every way, shape, or form. Like it's just what's that one song? Y'all remember Lamb Chop? This is the song that never ends, right? It's like trauma. This is the trauma that never, right? Trauma ends, but we still have ways in which, our trauma self desires to be expressed. And I want you to understand that, at least I believe, as long as you are aware of why you're doing it, like I'm aware of why I'm watching that series, right? Um, and I'm aware of, where it's resonating. And, honestly, today I actually had a prayer coming out the shower and I was thinking, God, continue to elevate me to not resonate with certain trauma points within myself anymore, right? Whether if you look at those survival patterns, being addicted or, using gossip as a weapon, just like any of those things that, and it's not to say I am necessarily the examples I'm bringing up are who I be, but I have gone there, right? What I talked to y'all podcasts ago about going through that court case, right? Going to court is like gossip 101. It's like taking gossip and weaponizing it against someone, right? And everyone has their gossip truth, right? But I pray this has been really inspiring for you to just sit with yourself. That's all we're doing. We're having a soul chat. We're just talking to our soul, being like, hey, how you doing? This was going on. And this is how we elevate. This is how we grow. This is how we look at things differently, and or reflect on those things so that we can not only give ourselves grace, but we want to thrive. So while you're healing, I want to encourage you that on the other side, go back to those basic needs, right? And look at, like, are you being creative? Are you communicating? Are you in spaces where people see you and hear you? Because those are the things that help us focus on our purpose as well. Your purpose is not just to heal. Your purpose is not just to be someone healing on this journey. It's to be thriving. And part of that thriving is the action that you take towards your dreams in the imperfection that you're sitting in right now. Last thing I will say is I was on an amazing call with a lot of amazing women yesterday in the Divine Feminine Leader group. And as I was listening to everyone, I could hear snippets of, just being ungrounded or unsure, a little bit of uncertainty and doubt. And I was like, let us just take a deep breath right now. Because as women, as men, just human beings, we can do so much and still feel like we're not enough and haven't done enough. And I refuse to keep believing in that lie. I see it in all of us. And I'm like, Oh no, honey, because the truth is you can do so much and still feel like it's not enough. I mean, look at celebrities, right? Can do so much and still feel like it's not enough. And not remember that you prayed for places you're at right now. You prayed for that job. You prayed for that degree. You prayed like these are just stages and phases. At the bottom of a mountain is the top of the next. At the top of every mountain is the bottom of the next, which teaches us that there's always new things to learn. There's always new ways to expand. And along the way, continue to give yourself grace. Surround yourself with cheerleaders. I shared some of this in the loneliness episode. And cheer yourself on and develop a strong mind. And for those of you, I want to share the last thing is continue your connection with the Most High, whatever that means to you. Continue your connection and getting to know it. Address your church hurt. Address your spiritual hurt where you are hurt of connecting with whomever. I know I love Jesus, okay? So I'm going to go bust out my Bible when I need to, right? We got to move past those things so we can continue to evolve and grow and take in some information. Sometimes it's the old information that becomes new information because you're in a different season to receive it. So this has been an amazing episode. Again, please leave your comments. Let me know what's resonating. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know your greatest takeaways. If you're someone who wants to be a guest on the podcast, you can reach out to me via email at hello@queensrecognizedqueens.com. If you are listening and you have a podcast and you'd like for me to be a guest, also shoot me an email. I love not only inviting people on, but being a guest. I have some amazing guests coming up later in January as well as February. But it's always an honor to do these solo episodes and just share with y'all conversations like I said I'm having with myself. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a comment. If you're listening on Apple, please head over and leave a review and a 5-star rating if that's your desire. And share this with a friend because that's how we continue to grow. That's how we continue to elevate. And sometimes you never know who needs the information. I love you all so much. It has been amazing and always real. Again, my name is Ebony Tutora, and I will see you on the next episode of Slow Chat. Bye for now.